What's up, YouTube fight fans? This is the Pro Fight Fan, and welcome to the first installment of the MMA Rounds, where I consolidate all of the MMA news and updates. In today's video, we're going to talk about possible opponents for Nick Diaz, what's next for Leon Edwards, Nate Diaz's recent roasting of Leon Edwards and Leon Edwards' response. We're also going to be talking about Khamzat Chimaev, and we're starting right now. So the MMA world has been put on notice, and according to a tweet from Ariel Helwani, Kevin Mubenga, who is the manager to one Nick Diaz, has stated that Nick Diaz will be returning to the Octagon in 2021 100%. That's 100%. Now that's big news. No question, whoever he fights, it's gonna be a massive event. But who do you think Nick should fight is the question. Now, on their show, DC and Helwani, Ariel stated he would like to see him fight the winner of Woodley vs. Covington, which takes place on September 19th. Now, we know per the tweet that Ariel sent on Sunday evening that Nick and his team will have their eye on the big upcoming welterweight fights, and when Ariel makes a statement, he usually has some sort of insider information to inform his reasoning. If we're looking at the first quarter of 2021 for the return of Diaz, the winner of this fight would have ample time to rest and recover from their fight in the event of no serious injury, and also enough time to have a training camp to prepare for the fight. With that said, Covington or Woodley could very well be the opponent for the return of Nick Diaz. DC would go on to state that the fight to make for Diaz would be against Leon Edwards. Now, I'd say that this is less likely. Number one, Leon isn't scheduled for a big upcoming welterweight fight, let alone any fight as of yet. And two, unfortunately for Edwards, while being a formidable opponent on a hot win streak, ranked inside the top 5 at welterweight, he just doesn't have the type of following that would allow for a massive event upon Nick Diaz's return. I think it would be a great fight. I personally just don't see it happening. And since the news of Nick Diaz's return surfaced, there's no shortage of fighters willing to take the fight. First up, Darren Till. He took to Twitter on Monday afternoon to say, if Nick Diaz wants to come back and scrap, who's the biggest star, the biggest fight, and the best fight for him outside of the middleweight champ? Me. That's who. Gorilla emoji. Now, fighting Darren Till would be a massive event, no doubt, but unfortunately for the Gorilla, Nick Diaz is looking for a welterweight fight. And while Till has fought there in the past, nowadays he's a middleweight fighter. Next, we have the NMF, Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. In response to Ariel Helwani's news breaking on Twitter, the Wonderboy would go on to say, I'm down to welcome him back to the ring. Would be an honor. Let's see where he's at. He's such a nice guy. Now, we haven't seen Thompson since his dominating victory over Vicente Luque on UFC 24, where he broke both of his hands. Now, this would be an intriguing fight as well, but I'm not sure this would be a fight Nick would want to take in his comeback fight. Then we have Dan the Outlaw Hardy, who's willing to make his return to the Octagon to face Nick Diaz. On Twitter Monday afternoon, Dan Hardy posted, sounds like a good scrap. Now, Hardy hasn't fought since September 2012, and yeah, that's 8 years since the last time we saw him in the Octagon due to some health concerns. As much as that would be a fan-friendly fight, I just don't see that fight being the one that takes place for Nick Diaz's return. Conor McGregor. In response to a tweet that BT Sport put up, which was actually a picture of Nate Diaz with his brother Nick Diaz standing side by side, Conor McGregor would go on to reply, line him up. Now, can you imagine a world where we get Jorge Masvidal versus Nate Diaz and Nick Diaz versus Conor McGregor on the same card? Okay, now, I know it's far-fetched. It would never happen. That's too much money. Those are two main events that can carry an event by themselves. But I mean, can't a fan just wish? Okay, so Conor McGregor's last fight was at welterweight against Donald Cerrone. So I mean, it's not necessarily impossible to happen. It would certainly be the biggest fight that can be made for Nick Diaz's return. Now, after taking a look at the schedule for welterweight fights, another name that could be tossed into the hat for a return opponent could be the natural-born killer Carlos Condit, who has a scheduled fight on October 3rd against Court McGee, the winner of Tough 11. Now, I know he's coming off of 5 losses in a row. Okay, this is a long shot, but Diaz and Condit do have history. Condit beat Diaz at UFC 143 8 years ago, and this may be the caliber fight that Nick would need in a return fight off of a 6-year layoff. Or maybe a fun fight with Robbie Lawler, who Nick also has history with. Nick knocked out the Ruthless One back in 2004. Now, I know Robbie's on a 4-fight losing streak as well, but he still may have the name value necessary and could also be the caliber fight that Nick would need after having not fought for what would be over 6 years. You let me know in the comments below who you think Nick should fight in his return fight. Next, Leon Edwards is making the rounds with interviews, and in an interview with ESPN's Brett Okamoto, he would go on to say that he's most likely going to be fighting before the year's out and hopes to fight in November. And he reiterated that on an interview with Submission Radio, but he did state that he would be willing to fight in late October on Fight Island. Now, he also stated that the Masvidal fight is the one fight that motivates him just as much as a title shot. Now, unfortunately for Edwards, Masvidal has been mentioned in a rematch for the BMF title against Nate Diaz. In his interviews, Edwards also tries to make the case for being the next opponent for Nick Diaz. He goes on to state, if he comes back and he beats me, a guy with an 8-fight win streak, that would put him in line for a title shot. Edwards does make a good point, but like I said earlier, unfortunately, I don't see Nick Diaz choosing him as an opponent for his return, especially being that the Diaz brothers don't really care much about the title. So looking at the rankings, it seems everyone is booked around Edwards with the exception of one Mr. Steven Wonderboy Thompson, who again hasn't fought in a year from the time Edwards is looking to make his return. Now that's a very interesting stylistic matchup, and they're close enough in the rankings to justify this matchup. Who do you think Edwards should face as his next opponent in October or November? Now let's move on to, well, Nate Diaz. The Diaz brothers are taking over all of the headlines. Now Nate Diaz recently made headlines as we may see him back in the ring come January in a BMF rematch against Jorge Masvidal. He was in the news again because of a post on Twitter Monday evening where Nate Diaz goes on to roast Leon Edwards, stating, "You got up in the back for acting like you were tight. This fight is the same everywhere, in or out of the cage. Don't get punked ever." That goes for Kebab also. Diaz and Khabib have had their share of scuffles out of the cage. You guys are in last place now. LOL. Isn't it funny how Nate Diaz finishes with LOL? Like, I can't picture him as a guy to use LOL. Anyway, now Leon Edwards has since responded to Nate with this Twitter post. "Don't get punked. You've been getting punked in the cage since 2009, bro. You got almost as many losses as wins. You don't belong in big boy talk. Sit down." Well, we can't say Edwards isn't willing to jump in and defend himself on social media. Having one of the most popular fighters in the UFC posting a tweet can help your brand, right? Nick Diaz announces his return. Leon Edwards starts doing the rounds for interviews. Nate Diaz roasts Leon Edwards. Leon Edwards responds, could this actually help Leon become an option for Nick's return? Unfortunately, I still don't think so, but time will tell. Lastly, this gentleman can't stay out of the MMA news circle. So there's a video circulating with Khamzat Chimaev dropping Alexander Gustafsson with a body kick in a training session. Not a big deal if you ask me. I mean, these guys are training at half speed, and it just happens to be a shot that lands on the right spot and possibly takes Gustafsson's air. But the video has been making the rounds, so I figured I'd drop it in here for you guys. We've been made aware of Khamzat's next 2 fights. Yes, you heard, that's right, his next 2 fights. One is gonna be in the US on September 19th on the Covington vs. Woodley card versus Gerald Meerschaert, and then a possible quick turnaround flying over to Fight Island versus Damian Maia. As of the video, the Maia fight has not been finalized. finalized. His next opponent, known as GM3, says it's disrespectful that Khamzat is already set to fight Damian Maia next. And if I was GM3, I would probably also feel disrespected. Khamzat has been touted by many as the next coming of Khabib, but this is MMA where anything can happen. Let's see if he can use this motivation to stop the Khamzat hype train. That does it for the first installment of the MMA Rounds, where I consolidate all of the MMA news and updates for you guys. If you liked the video, please make sure to hit that thumbs up. If you haven't already, make sure to subscribe and make sure to hit that notification bell. I'm the Pro Fight Fan. I'm signing out, and I'll see you in the next one.